Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Forman, managing partner at ParaFi Capital. We're a digital asset-focused fund, have been in the space since 2018. And today I'm here with 4 builders in the space to discuss the topic of BTC liquidity in the context of shared security. We've obviously seen just dramatic growth in restaking on Ethereum with EigenLayer, almost 20 billion of TVL, almost 18% of all Ethereum that's staked has been restaked. And as we see this play out on Bitcoin, it may look similar, but it's likely to look different, and want to talk to you guys about what you're seeing today. So to kick it off, let's just do an around the horn, quick intro, what you're building, and kind of what core problem you're solving. Why don't you kick it off, Marco?
Thanks, yeah. Okay, I'm Marco. I'm with Tomo. We are a social wallet, basically working together with a lot of the Bitcoin layer 2 ecosystem projects to make it easier for people, to navigate this kind of new ecosystem, and yeah, to make some yield on their Bitcoins.
Yeah, thanks for that. My name is Antonio. We got a little hiccup here, so I got thrown in last minute. So I'm gonna need to check my phone a little bit. Sorry for that. Either way, I've been in the crypto space since 2017 professionally. Since 2012, more like from a hobby perspective. It says I'm the CEO of Chakra, which I'm flattered about, but I'm not actually the CEO, I'm the CSO, so yeah, last minute changes. Either way, so we at Chakra, we're building a settlement layer. We're seeing the increase of growth in BitFi layer 2s and some friction around the moving assets across the different layer 2s, and also not a common settlement layer to settle on. So we're aiming and developing to tackle that problem.
So everyone, I'm Alexei. I'm the co-founder of Bob. Bob stands for Build on Bitcoin, but it also, what many people don't know, it stands for Build on Both, or Best of Both. We're a hybrid layer 2. So we've been building in the Bitcoin space for years, started in 2015. We spent a lot of time on Ethereum and also other ecosystems as well. And we realized that Bitcoin L2s are obviously going to be a big thing, but for Bitcoin L2s to win, you can't start in isolation. You need to embrace the network effects of Ethereum, and that's what Bob does. So we are building a system that inherits security from both Bitcoin and Ethereum, and Ethereum can plug into Solana and all other networks without requiring third-party bridging, and of course enables to source liquidity from both Bitcoin and ecosystems like Ethereum at the same time.
Awesome. And hey, everyone, Jacob Phillips, co-founder of Lombard. Before this, I was the first hire COO at a DeFi derivatives protocol. And then before that, I spent 3 years at Polychain as a venture partner. And Lombard is turning Bitcoin into a productive asset by building a Bitcoin LST on Babylon. Our goal here is to sort of onboard the $1 trillion in capital to DeFi using staking as the gateway. So start with staking and then bring people into the ecosystem, working with a lot of these guys on stage here today.
That's great. Jacob, maybe just starting with you, you've probably witnessed, studied, observed the growth of LRTs on EigenLayer. You're building this on Bitcoin. What are kind of lessons learned? How are you going to be different? What's your kind of go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, watching a lot of what happened in the Ethereum ecosystem around EigenLayer, I think paints the picture quite perfectly for the amount of demand and excitement that's going to happen for this in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So, I mean, in terms of like the novel things we're doing, I think it's mostly that we're sort of applying this logic to a new asset. So, I mean, before this, I was working at a perps protocol. At the time that EigenLayer was blowing up, every single DeFi protocol around me, certainly in the perp space, but across all of DeFi, was sort of like everybody was thinking about rebuilding their stack upon, everybody built the first round of DeFi protocols upon ETH and static, USDC, and now everybody's sitting here thinking about building on LSTs, LRTs, building on stuff like USDE. The whole DeFi space has sort of, found product market fit in the form of these composable yield-bearing tokens, and the one thing that's missing from all of this is Bitcoin. So thankfully, we've sort of partnered up with the Babylon guys, have a great way to sort of like introduce this yield, use all of that excitement around restaking and liquid staking tokens as the catalyst to get people excited about moving Bitcoin on chain. For the longest time, Bitcoin sat there as deep in cold storage with no sense of coming on chain. You start with staking, get people excited about that. This is sort of like the MVP of DeFi in my mind. It's like the first thing you can pitch to institutions and big whales to get them to sort of start to get that capital a little bit more involved. And that's after that we sort of upsell a little bit into lending protocols, DEXs, per protocols, you name it.
Great. And as we think about like the Bitcoin layer 2 ecosystem broadly, and maybe Alexei, you're the right person to kind of address this. As you've seen this kind of proliferation of different layer 2s in Ethereum, you don't have a composability, the UX degrades, the bridging experiences can be subpar. How do you, are you seeing that, how is that differing as you kind of observe the Bitcoin layer 2 ecosystem? How is Bob focused on kind of solving some of those problems?
So it means, to say something controversial, Bitcoin L2s are a lie. They don't exist yet, right? So we're still all hoping and working towards things like BitVM or in the future something like a ZK opcode in Bitcoin to really have the settlement to Bitcoin. Right now we can work with things like Babylon or merge mining to inherit some level of Bitcoin security. Now in terms of UX, obviously we've seen hundreds, probably maybe exaggerated, like 40, 50 of them emerge that are aiming to become Bitcoin layer 2s. And of course that means that as a Bitcoin holder I need to decide where do I go, what do I use the Bitcoin for, how do I actually inform myself about the security trade-offs. On Bob, we recently released something called Gateway, which is essentially an intent-based bridging solution that allows you to go from Bitcoin into essentially any Bitcoin product, whether you just want to go into Bitcoin, like in WBTC on Bob, or on Ethereum, or on another chain, or if you actually want to then have a lending position against your Bitcoin, or you want to earn Bitcoin yield, or you want to quickly on-ramp into LSD and do something with it. What that does, it issues an intent. So you say, hey, I want to do X, and then you have professional LPs that just source that for you, and you just swap Bitcoin against the final position. We've seen this on Ethereum with things like a cross protocol, which are growing, and I think this part of infrastructure will be key to onboard more users into Bitcoin. Things like BitVM, things like ZK bridges, if we ever see them on Bitcoin, will need that because the retail users would not be able to actually do the challenges themselves. It will be too complex. And especially in a time where we see account abstraction and smart accounts really dominate, and I think at ECC this year we have how many events about social sign and smart accounts. You see this happening on Bitcoin as well, and I think this in combination, so sign in with Gmail, get a wallet going without having to worry about your private key, and then just do something with Bitcoin. If we can get that flow to work, we will be able to unlock the 300 million users that already have Bitcoin today, and they just sit on exchanges or in Legend, just don't know what to do with it.
Antonio, Marco, do you guys want to talk a bit about how you're activating users, bringing liquidity to Bitcoin?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I would like to say that Alexei brought some good points there. So this ties a bit into the previous question as well. So we're trying to, or we're developing a more frictionless, but also our aim is to gather like the liquidity in one settlement layer, and we're doing that with our novel algorithm decentralized bridge system. So with that, you don't get as much vertices as a lot of other bridges. In a lot of other bridges, there is quite a lot of vertices back and forth from blockchains. So that often scales quadratically. With us, we have our bridge system is built to have n vertices, and that will scale linearly instead of quadratically. But yeah, in essence, what Alexei said, it's very important also to put a lot of effort into research, which we're doing, covenants, researching into OPCAT, for example, researching into BitVM to really get the BitFi ecosystem out there. But also, we want to emphasize that like we got a lot of liquidity TVL on our ecosystem, and we can in the form of bitcoins. So we want to help out projects, different project L2s, LSTs, LSDs, building out there to settle on our chain, and we can help them out with liquidity.
Yeah, so I think to add to that from like Tomo perspective, I think like most of us here have been around for a while in the space. I think around like 4 years ago when the DeFi summer started, everyone was talking about like how hard it is for like the normal people to onboard to like, Aave or Compound or some like easy application. You have to get MetaMask, you have to get some like ETH for gas and all these things. And now, like it's 4 years later, I think we solved kind of like a couple of things within the ETH ecosystem. Now we're starting with the BTC ecosystem, where like basically like the user experience is even more complicated than we're all like used to with Ethereum. So I think Tomo is there to try to like solve a lot of these challenges. Alexei was already mentioning like social login, creating wallets for people while they're like not even like seeing that something's happening in the background. We are trying to like make like staking, for example, in Lombard or in Babylon, like seamless, for people. Well, they not even like know what protocol they are using, but they are just like doing what they want to do, like staking and getting the yield. So I think, there's a lot of work to be done here, on the UI side, and that's what Tomo is trying to solve here, with like a social, wallet application and extension.
So I guess as you think about the Bitcoin's 3x the size of this Ethereum by market cap, but some people have been skeptical that there's actually demand within the Bitcoin ecosystem to use DeFi, to earn a yield. That the kind of ethos behind Bitcoin in the early days has been more buy and hold. Large groups of Bitcoiners, don't like even things like ordinals or runes. I'm curious if you see it the same way, if you see it differently. Obviously, you see it a bit differently than that, but maybe push back and share your thoughts on that point.
So, sorry. So I think I totally agree with what you're saying. Like it's very hard to like convince like the Bitcoin maxis to do to actually do something with their Bitcoin, which is probably sitting in some cold storage for a long time. So I think like it's very important to kind of educate people around like what is actually happening with your Bitcoin. I think most of these layer 2s are actually like in some way connected or building on Babylon. So I think it's very, very important to make sure that like there's a lot of education around like what Babylon is actually doing like with your Bitcoin, or basically what they're not doing with your Bitcoin, because you keep it in self-custody with them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, I would like to emphasize here that there hasn't been too many historically products out there to be able to earn yield or participate in DeFi money Legos on the Bitcoin ecosystem, at least not in a secure, efficient way. And I think security is key. A lot of Bitcoin maxis, they are very keen on decentralization. They're very keen on security, and for it is looking very promising for the future. But yeah, as we emphasized before, there needs to be also more tools and more research to go into. For example, as I mentioned, OPCat, BitVM, things like that. I mean, even the Taproot BIP took some time for it to go through,
So, I mean, I think there's different types of Bitcoin users, right? And if we're realistic, you have 20% of all Bitcoin is in Ledger, right? That is definitely a market we can attract. Most of the people in Ledger actually have other assets. They use Ledger Live. The UX can improve, but that's a massive market opportunity to get that to actually do stuff. And I think, if you, as you said, you ease them in, you ease these users into, okay, I can stake my Bitcoin. Not everybody will want yield, right? But people who are used to staking on Ethereum, They have Bitcoin. I mean, if you look at, I mean, my argument is almost every ETH user has Bitcoin. You have $10 billion worth of WBTC on Ethereum. You have more on like Binance Chain, Tron, and whatnot. The problem there is the UX. It's hard to mint. Like retail cannot get it. You used to have RamBTC, which was basically an on-ramp, but it was also centralized, got shut down. You have TBTC, which unfortunately UX-wise is also struggling, which is also why we built gateways, so you just can easily on-ramp. But that's a $10 billion market, and it's sleeping, right? It's mainly used by whales. If you are able to provide a better UX for people to actually use that Bitcoin, they will. The maxis, right? I mean, who is a maxi? I'm a Bitcoin maxi. I've been working on Bitcoin since I got into crypto, right? It's been like 9 years. But I would still use my Bitcoin cautiously, but I would use it for things if I could. Right now, however, it's a completely different experience. I'm used to using MetaMask and Genesis Safe with my ledger. On Bitcoin, there is nothing there. I can't really get my Bitcoin into earning yield unless it's on EVM. And that bridging experience is absolutely catastrophic. Then if you look at really, I guess, the laser eye maxes, people who are against ordinals, everything else, but do they really matter? And my argument is no, they don't. This is a crowd that just follows the cult of Bitcoin. And since ordinals have happened, where are they? They're gone, right? You don't hear them anymore. If you go to Bitcoin conferences, I used to be one of the people who get uninvited from the Bitcoin Max events because I would do Bitcoin bridging. This year I got invited to talk about BitVM, and I saw no one of the podcast mafia basically there telling everybody, oh, ordinals is bad. No, like everybody's realizing we need to do stuff with Bitcoin. Mining revenue is almost at all-time low. Miners are very bullish on layer 2s. I mean, we have 80% of the hash rate interested in merge mining and doing things with Bitcoin security on Bob and other networks because they need more revenue. And as for people who, like whether Bitcoin maxis care about security, I probably would say there's a technical community, very, very small, that really cares. We might not be able to convert them immediately. It'll take time, but they will experiment. If you have a good design, like Babylon merge mining, they will look at it. But the majority of people keeps Bitcoin on exchanges. And for them, no, it has to be easy. Click, do something very simple. And if you give them better yield products with an easier onboarding than with Binance, so think of it, one wallet, you don't need to do KYC for everything, or even if you have to do some parts, and you can use all of these things at once, it's composable. You basically have the same thing with Bitcoin as with ETH, but in a super fast cycle because it's already there. We can just take that and make it available to Bitcoin. You just need to get the info right. So I do think there's a massive opportunity there to convert a lot of people into using their BTC if you make it easy.
I think Alexei hit the nail on the head there with a ton of that. So just one small follow-up here would be Ben back at a couple of years ago, ParaFi and Polychain co-led a deal into a liquid deal into a project called Badger DAO, who was trying to onboard Bitcoin to DeFi in 2021. Now, many years later, I mean, just the narrative, like think about this conversation we're having. We're talking about BTC expressivity in a way that in 2021 you wouldn't be able to have that conversation. We're talking about, Bitcoin people getting excited about bridging and BTC DeFi. And I mean, you led with all the growth statistics around how much this space has gone. I mean, there's already, how many different projects in the BTC DeFi space with a couple $1 billion, and we're still just getting started. And maybe the one thing, I mean, these guys, I think, sort of talked about how, BTC maxis may be hesitant to onboard, but there's so many other Bitcoin users in the space who are excited to get involved right now, and I think we're seeing that. I mean, even just you look at the Babylon testnet, it's pretty crazy. Some of the folks who are running nodes on there. Some of the biggest miners in the space, some of the biggest institutions, some of the biggest security firms. I mean, people are getting really excited about that. Maybe the one other piece I'd add to this is that. We're not only pitching to Bitcoin maxis. I mean, Alexei talked about how a lot of ETH holders have this. I was on a panel last night and was posed the question of, hey, this is an ETH conference. What are you doing here if you're a BTC DeFi company? And it's like, I mean, we're here trying to pitch, we built this whole ETH DeFi ecosystem. We don't necessarily need to build entirely parallel ecosystems. It's not like we're fully separate. I mean, we're here working with the biggest ETH DeFi protocols in the space. Every single person on stage here, I think, is like collaborating with, the likes of the people over at the conference just across the way. So I think all of these ecosystems are sort of collaborating. ETH and BTC can live together in DeFi.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I have a question, and I genuinely, I would say don't have like a strong view on this, and I'm just curious. Like, as you think about, restaking on Bitcoin and restaking on Ethereum, if we're talking like 3 years from now, like what market is bigger, and are there differences in the, the types of operators and AVSs effectively on those two networks? Do you need both? I'm throwing a few questions in there, so feel free to answer them. And then kind of like, how do you think about the equilibrium staking rate on Bitcoin, over the long term? So a few different questions mixed in.
Yeah, maybe I can jump in here real quick. In terms of which one will be bigger, kind of hard to say, but I think one thing that's going to be pretty clear is that if you just compare the two assets, BTC and ETH, or BTC and USDC, it's like those are kind of the three assets that probably are going to dominate the bulk of TVL in DeFi. And to date, ETH has been the only one that's sort of been dominant. There's really not that. There's only like $10 billion in WBTC on chain, and so I think like Bitcoin in a lot of ways is the best collateral for a lot of these ecosystems. Even restaking, it's like if you could use Bitcoin, an asset, more liquid, much bigger market cap. There's a lot of reasons to think that Bitcoin will and should become core to all of these different, kind of a core collateral in all of these different protocols that we sort of build up. So I think it's only a matter of time that this becomes a more dominant. And if I guess it depends a little bit on how the ETH BTC ratio kind of plays out, but I'd expect them both to be massive. Right now, there's just it's crazy at how undeveloped the Bitcoin ecosystem is relative to the level of ETH collateral you see in the space.
I mean, I think looking purely at the market cap is always dangerous, right? Because on ETH, you already have a lot of ETH that is staked. So restaking is an easy next step. Changing user behavior is always difficult. So it's going to be an uphill battle for Bitcoin. It's going to take a while. However, if you go to Bitcoin conference and you ask people, who of you only has Bitcoin or who of you has Ethereum? I mean, there was the memes, right, where the Bitcoin maxes would go and say, oh, who has ETH? And like everybody raises their hand. People are used to this. So I think the question will be, how do we, not within our existing ecosystem of ETH users and like Core Web3 users, they will stake Bitcoin, no problem, right? But going beyond that to the 300 million users that have Bitcoin in their wallets, right? Bitcoin is the most widely held digital asset. We have spot ETFs for that now. You have institutions investing and buying a Bitcoin for the portfolio. Can you get them to stake? And that, unfortunately, is not just a technical question, it's a regulatory question. Can you get a Van Eck, a Fidelity, a BlackRock to accept stake Bitcoin in their portfolio? If yes, and I had an interesting conversation with them, they're actually more leaning towards hash rate tokenization because they see this as the native yield for now, but they're looking at it. And regulations change, and I definitely think over the next 3 years we'll see that market grow. Whether it will be bigger than Ethereum depends, right? On not just the tech, unfortunately.
Yeah, I fully agree on that. It depends totally on what kind of Bitcoin users you're able to tap into. Institutions, of course, would be great. So I wouldn't say I have any answers to what blockchain will be the largest in terms of staking. But at Chakra, we're aiming to do it interoperable, and we're not closing the door on any, well, at least from the beginning. We're focusing on Bitcoin, but also on, we're going to focus on Ethereum as well. So we don't want to close any door on the larger blockchains, and of course the L2s out there. So yeah, I think that's my 5 cents on that.
I think it's also like a matter of demand in the end. People will start building on it. Demand will, in the end, lead to yield, and the yield will, lead to more people wanting to stake. So I think in the end, the market and the builders will decide, and it doesn't matter which one will be the bigger one in the end. It matters if that everything, all the applications that we're all using, are secure. And probably it's still kind of a blue sea, I think. So probably this market is big enough for both Ethereum and Bitcoin stake to a certain percentage. I think Ethereum only 25% is staked right now. There's still a big way to go, yeah.
I think we're out of time, but if there are any questions from the audience, or if you guys have any questions for each other.
You don't ask that question. You don't. But jokes aside, I mean, like realistically speaking, where does the yield come from, right? As an infra player, it comes from people using the chains that are using it for security. I mean, us as a layer two, we have, well, the yield that, you know, if a project plugs into us and we use someone for security, the yield comes from our sequencer fees. So that means more TVL, the more volume, the more sequencer fees that can be shared. Which makes LSTs very attractive, because LSTs on Bob, for example, can contribute to TVL and then can be rewarded based on like their contribution to the actual sequencer fees. But it's a very good question. So maybe if somebody else, I mean. But think about it this way. Look at Tron. Tron has been dominant in stablecoin transfers. And in countries and regions where actually people like know Bitcoin, they know Bitcoin as the one asset that, like, as the one digital asset. And Tron is making what, $70 to $90 million revenue a month? Well, there you go. That's where the yield comes from. Really being able to onboard, and that's why Bitcoin is very powerful as a brand. Like Apple spend billions of dollars, so when you see the Apple, you know what it is. Bitcoin already has that. So if you go to someone on the street in Buenos Aires and you tell them, hey, you can send money on Bitcoin, you can use Bitcoin, you can borrow against it, you can pay with it, you can earn yield on it, it's an easy sell. And that is the market we actually have to go to, right? That is what Bitcoin can do, and that's, I think, the power of Bitcoin, you know, in terms of, you know, what will be bigger, to go beyond this core Web3 bubble that we are in right now, actually, to scale the user base. That will then pay for sending stablecoins, sending Bitcoin, and that is, again, where then the revenue will come from for the security budget.
And I also think that, yeah, Babylon adds a lot of value to this. Babylon actually provides proof of stake, but building on the hash rate, the Bitcoin security, and the first project doing that. So, and Babylon itself aren't generating any yield. Actually, Chakra, we're the largest finality provider for currently for the Babylon protocol, and merely so that proof of stake algorithm can be applied to basically any other blockchain, and that will generate. That blockchain will pay for that in some sense or another, and that will generate yield, for example. I think that's and that's what we are using in combination of our own written consensus algorithm as well. So to generate yield. So I think that's a good first step. I think. In the future as well, there will be more DeFi money Legos that will generate yield, like lending protocols, DEXs, and stuff like that as well, and which are already there at some point, but will be even better. So I think there's a lot of yield-bearing mechanisms out there that are really valid and not like Ponzi schemes that we should try to avoid.
Thank you, guys.